Hello everybody, hopefully you're having a wonderful and fantabulous and mystical day. My name is Emmanuel Aguilar, aka Mystic Fox 4. If you're not familiar, I'm the guy that made this game, Chop 'em Up. I'm the creator, artist, whatever. Yeah. Anyways, I recently been reading a couple of comments on one of the videos of my card game, and I realized that I haven't really updated anything online as far as like my game. And I felt like this was a good opportunity to just, talk about a couple different points of my game and how I've developed it, and also to talk about the main topic, which is going to be about, going through iterations of your game and developing it. Because a lot of times you don't see, like, behind the scenes of, like, how a card game is actually made. So I think it's really important to kind of, like, develop your game, and it's not just staying the exact same the entire time. Without further ado, we're going to hop into that. But actually, I wanted to let you guys know I'm going to have some process videos going up, like little tidbits of like how I make some of the illustrations. So if anyone's interested, feel free to hit that subscribe button or leave a like on this video, and we'll see if I put that up or if I throw it up on some pay site where you can buy it. Anywho, let's hop right into it. So I think it's important for people in general to kind of develop their game, because a lot of the time when you think of a concept for a game, especially a card game, you could run into a couple hiccups or a couple different issues when you're actually playing it. Part of that being balancing and just kind of feeling things through. Fortunately, I've had the good fortune of being able to have played fairly large group of different types of card games, and I've learned of mechanics and things like that I've liked in those games, and I've adapted them into my game. Some off the top of my head would be Magic the Gathering, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and just the top, to name a few. Now, one of the comments in some of the videos, I'm gonna redact some of the names and stuff from the video just because I don't know these people on a personal level, so I don't want to specifically point them out in a YouTube video. I think it's a little bit weird if I do. But anything I mention in terms of my artwork and my game and how I'm developing, I'll go ahead and throw that up on the screen. But one of the comments was about the mana system that I'm using, where it's like a tug-of-war thing, where it's like a shared mana pool. And they mentioned that shared mana pools aren't really good, and that they're not very great in terms of not like giving your opponent resources and stuff, because oftentimes in the example of Digimon, you'll get stalled, right? They'll not give you enough resources in order for you to play something. So to address this point, yeah, that's true. Sometimes your opponent doesn't give you that many resources, and it doesn't allow you to actually play the cards that you want to play. But I feel like in my experience with developing my game, I've kind of learned that, and so the main idea around the way that the cards are played, at least from my experience, like I said, I do need to balance more and like play around with numbers a little bit more. But for the majority, from what we've play tested, it hasn't had that kind of a problem, and if it does, it's a result of punishing your opponent. If you're not able to play a card, it doesn't necessarily mean that the game is bad. It means that the situation and the variance in whatever hand that you were dealt at the beginning of the game wasn't favorable to your position. With that same thing being said, it wasn't necessarily favorable to the opponent either. It's just the luck of the draw sometimes, and not every game is going to be amazing, right? If you could make a card game consistent, I think that's a problem, right? If you're getting the exact same hand every single game, there's kind of an issue there. It's too consistent. You need a little bit of random. So just addressing that, right? You're not going to win every game. That's just, I think that's a good place to start. I think having fun should take priority over winning. Second thing, going into the next part, I have a little bullets here just to keep myself on track. So if I look to the side, that's probably what I'm looking at. The whole thing they brought up was the whole life decking thing, and how it's a good maybe aspect to kind of try out for the game, which I'm not saying it's not a good thing to try out, like as a mechanic. I think it's a great mechanic. The only thing is my game and my mechanics of a lot of my cards don't really revolve around that, and I do think if I do life decking, it's gonna make zombies super broken because they recur from the graveyard, meaning I bring them out of the graveyard and I play them on the battlefield. So I guess it does go with the theme of it. Like if a survivor kills a zombie or deals damage to the opponent, instead of taking that damage, they can choose to have it be taken from their deck, and then those cards get thrown into the graveyard, which makes recursion really easy for zombies because if they hit the graveyard, then they go boom on the battlefield or whatever. They can flood the field really quickly. So I guess in that aspect it'd be good for it, but in the other aspect, which is like just plain old making cards not feel broken, and making the opponent feel like they're actually doing something when they're defeating you, in my game I feel like it would be more counterintuitive. Now I could tweak cards and I could make them in a way where, you know, if they're destroyed via, you know, dealt damage and card goes from deck to graveyard, or maybe they just get like banished or removed from play, like those cards are just like no longer in the game. I think that would be cool, but I like playing my cards and I want to put that into my card game, and unfortunately it feels like milling to me, right? If you're not familiar with what milling is, I'll give you a very brief description of it. In Magic the Gathering, there is a mechanic called mill. There is also self-mill. Essentially what that means is you play a card or an effect happens and cards from your deck go to the graveyard, or from your opponent's deck go directly to the graveyard, and there's very little you can do to counter this other than, like I said, recursion goes through it, where you can, you know, bring things from the graveyard to the battlefield. In some cases, certain combos in Magic don't allow you to bring them back at all, but that's another topic entirely. But the main point is I don't like that because I'm not able to play my cards, right? It's one thing to not draw your card, right? Like at the beginning of the turn, you don't get it, or, you know, you have a card that allows you to draw cards, like a draw engine. I call those engine cards, very much like in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a core cards that allow the deck to function, which I think is a really cool thing, and I think Pokemon also does a very similar thing, where it's like you have one guy that's like your main fighter and everyone's supporting him, and I think that's really cool. And that's actually the main purpose of the battlefield and the safe house in my card game, which is the Pokemon, the bench area is kind of like the safe house. Only I really like the concept of the safe house is where people utilize their skills to help one another, to get stronger, because in a zombie apocalypse, if somebody has a safe house, they're going to bunker up and they're going to train each other, and they're going to get, you know, figure out how to get resources and things like that. And I think that concept's really cool, which later on I'll lead into something else. So that being said, I'm not the biggest fan of mill in general. I think it's not very fun because you don't, like I said, you don't get to play your cards. They just go, all right, graveyard, or no, remove from play, which I don't think is very fun. But I'm sure many people online have been able to create a game that is similar to that or great, but unfortunately I haven't been able to think of anything. The next point is using all cards as a resource instead of having resource that your opponent gives you. This was another comment that somebody had made, where instead of using the push and pull mechanic, because it's kind of dictated on your opponent giving you resources, they can starve you essentially the entire game, and that's great and dandy. But I do think if you're that's like a group thing, you know, that's depending on the person that you're playing with. Now I know some people are super competitive and they want to play this game like to the T, and that's great, you can definitely do that, but I'm going to tell you right now, from the way that I have the game set up, it's very difficult to kind of do that. And even if they do that, you just drop a big guy down, problem solved. You're going to give them resources, but keep in mind there's only so much you can do with the resources if you don't actually have the cards that you need to get to where you need to go. You can see examples of that in the play tests that I have uploaded. You can go ahead and check those out if you like. Link will be down in the description below. But main thing being is that it's very difficult to kind of do in my game, so I don't think that would be necessarily an issue. Now, if it does come up, I could create cards to kind of mitigate that. So like if your opponent plays a card that is a cost 3 or 3 or less, this card can slash it, meaning it'll deal damage to it. Maybe it won't kill it, but the next attack that it's going to hit, right? Like if it passes over to you on the thing, you can go ahead and swing at it and essentially just kill it. So that they now lost a card because they had to play that, right? So we can create, with that being said, we can create cards around that part of the game. And I think that that's really important to design around a flaw, to make it into something you want to keep your opponent from not doing. So like, hey, I want him to stop playing these three resource cards because it keeps stalling me and it doesn't let me do anything. Well, cool. There's now going to be a card in the game that's going to help mitigate that. So if you drop a survivor that costs 3, and you're at like 2 or whatever, you give me 1 resource. Well, guess what? I'm gonna swipe that, and chances are it's probably gonna kill it. So you now wasted your turn, essentially, or at least that portion of your turn, because you chose to do that. Now, it's not going to be happening all the time. You're not always going to have this creature on the field. And I know in Digimon they have tamers to kind of mitigate that. But in my game, if you surpass 0 and it's only at 1, right? Or you don't have anything to play after 0, it's actually just going to go directly to 3. So it's like, kind of a push and pull. So I guess like trainers aren't actually necessary in that game because it's part of the rule set. So and then you can also modify things with rules, right? So if something's not working, it's not functioning, you just make a rule that mitigates it so that players can't do that. So in this case, if you're at like 2 or 3, you can't play a 3 cost. But that's kind of contradictory because you kind of want people to get bottlenecked, right? That's part of the fun. You wanna strategize around putting your opponent into a bad position. So now in my game, I've actually updated it a little bit. So I'm going to talk about a couple of those points, and then I think we're going to call it because there's going to be a lot of stuff that I just don't want to rant about. So I was thinking about 2 different game types, actually 3, but I'm going to talk about 2 in this video. And I wanted to separate them into 2 different categories because very much like in Magic the Gathering, and I think even Pokemon does this, but I could be wrong. In Magic, there's different game types you can play. There's Legacy, there's Commander, there's Pauper. But in my game, I wanted to have 2 different game modes, at least at the beginning. One being Headhunter, and the second being Squad Battles. Now, Headhunter, I feel like would be really fun to play like a 1-on-1, which is essentially like the base game that I had already talked about, where you have to kill 6 either survivors or zombies, and then you win the game. But the other one would be Squad Battles. Squad Battles would be kind of like Magic the Gathering's life point system, where you have a certain amount of points, and then if you drop the first player to drop below 0, loses. Or kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh, you have like your 100,000,000 points or whatever, but it'd be measured in like 100. And now this would allow, survivors or zombies that deal more damage to win the game quicker, but also, you want to play around it. So I would have to make some hard removal cards for that. So like, destroy target unit that has, 20 points or more, or just remove all equipment on it, or drop them below 10, like make cards specifically for that game mode, which would be Squad Battles. And I think that that'd be a really fun thing to do, just because it kind of alters the game and it's a different way of actually playing the game. And it's just a different way of looking at everything, I think, altogether. So last point I want to bring up before I go, I have updated a bunch of art stuff. I'll probably show that to you guys. I have a full roster thing that has all the cards that I have made artwork for so far up to date. But I am thinking about putting it on a Patreon. so that people that do like the game, they can go ahead and support it. And each tier has a different thing that you can actually do or support and get different cards. I want to make this like into a little shop and stuff like that, where Patreon people get hollowed cards that are they're rare to, or they're unique to the Patreon, and then people can purchase full art cards on the website, or you can get just the base cards on the website as well. But people that are part of the Patreon, you can probably chat with people that aren't part of the Patreon. You can see if you can trade them. Now these are going to be physical cards, obviously, but in the tabletop simulator, it's just going to be full art card or standard card, and they're probably going to be the carry cards. I'll probably do something a little bit different for some of the support cards. Like maybe there'll be signed support cards or something like that. And I also actually investigated on how to make the packs for the cards, so I'll probably send those in like this little cool package, and it's probably gonna be called like a care package or something. So yeah, I think I'm gonna talk about like some weapon stuff in another video, just because I feel like this is dragging on a little bit too long. But zombies are weak to a special soda, which is called Fizzy Gold, and it's basically like a Mountain Dew, and it's like when affected by electricity, it makes it corrosive to zombies, so it eats at their zombie virus. So I'll talk about that in another video though. Alright guys, well, thank you for watching, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, comment down below what you thought, and bye bye.